Hello, everyone. Hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Relationship Atlas podcast. Today, we're going to talk about emotional safety in intimate relationships. And we're just going to describe exactly what it is. We're going to touch on how it affects a relationship. And we're going to get into some ways on how to start creating more emotionally safe environments in our relationship. So, as I talk about this, you're probably going to hear my dog in the background. She has chosen to eat at exactly this moment. It seems to be a trend whenever I pop on the podcast and I'm talking. I don't know if there's a safety cue for her, but she tends to get up and just start munching. So I would bargain if you go into some past episodes, you're probably going to hear Nova just chowing down. And listen, she is not a quiet eater. So I apologize in advance for the noise in the background. But today, let's talk about emotional safety. Maybe Nova feels emotionally safe to go eat. I'm not sure. But emotional safety in intimate relationships. So when you think about safety, generally speaking, we start to think in terms of physical safety, right? I'm either safe or unsafe here. And so you think about walking in daytime versus nighttime. There is generally a sense of physical safety during the day and less of a sense of physical safety at night. Now, this is especially true for women because of the history and the proof of concept that at night there is a higher reality that they may have or come into physical harm. So, when we think about physical safety, we want to consider what safety is. So, safety is the condition of being protected from or unlikely to cause danger, risk, or injury. Okay, so safety. They would leave for their own safety. So, I would leave a space because I don't feel safe here physically. Now, in most relationships, we feel physically safe, right? We don't feel in harm's way physically that we're going to get hit or abused. For other relationships, that isn't true. So, physical safety is kind of the starting point for any sort of relational safety. I know in this space, my body is going to be safe. I will be physically safe, meaning, there isn't a reality that I could be under threat physically or die, right? That's a lot of what our psychology is focused on initially, is just being safe and knowing we will continue to live. That's what our mind is busy focusing on. Once we feel a sense of physical safety in a dynamic, then it starts to talk about other aspects of safety. Then, and again, in this podcast, we're going to talk about the emotional side, but there's also a psychological side as well. So I like to separate the two, emotion and psychological, because I believe emotion and intellect are different concepts. And I think they represent slightly different experiences. So, again, we're going to focus on the emotional aspect today. So, I want you to consider you're walking at night, you're walking down a dark alley. There isn't anybody around, but it's still dark, it's still quiet, it's still creepy. In that experience, it's highly likely that even though there is nobody around, the perception of a threat is still real, and therefore you don't feel physically safe, right? Due to the environment around you. Now, again, there's nobody running down the back alley towards you. There's no screaming. There's nobody in sight. But at any turn or behind any corner, there's the idea that comes up that somebody could be there. And so therefore we have our guard up. We are ready for a fight. We are ready to protect our physical safety. I want you to consider that same concept and then apply it to emotions. When we think about being emotionally safe in a relationship dynamic, it essentially means it's a space where we feel secure and comfortable expressing our emotions without fear of judgment, rejection, or negative consequence, right? So you might be thinking, well, I don't say much in a conversation, so I don't know what kind of unsafe environment I could be creating. The reality is that quietness is similar to an empty alleyway. We're not actually sure if this is safe or not, and therefore it's deemed unsafe. Now, nothing is attacking me, nothing is fighting me, nothing is coming at me. And still, yet, because I don't have the certainty of safety, I'm questioning the integrity of this space and if it's safe. So that was a challenge for me for a long time. I do have a history of stonewalling, admittedly so. I do have a history of going silent and quiet. And in a lot of ways, what I was doing was just trying to wrap my mind around what was being said and how to best respond. Now, I wasn't actually acknowledging anything, right? I was quiet. And so, what in that quiet was doing was creating an unsafe environment for my partner. She would share, she'd be emotional, and I would not respond. I'd probably have a dead face, and I wouldn't necessarily give much information or give much feedback through my body or through my words on what exactly was processing. Ergo, unsafe environment, right? This is a really important piece of the conversation. And I'm just going to make sure that we feel clear on this before I move forward. Just because we are not attacking, abusing, demoralizing, belittling, you name it, just because we aren't posing a direct threat to the safety does not then mean by nature we are then providing a safe space. Safety or a safe space is created through action, through intention. Doing nothing does not create safety. And I hope that that feels clear because that is a huge component to our conversation today of what it takes to create emotional safety. Okay, we got that. Now, when we move into emotional safety, what we're referring to is, well, safety with emotion. So before we get to holding it for your partner, before we get to saying, hey, how do I be a safe space for my partner emotionally? I first want us to consider what kind of safety do we feel with our own emotions. So do a little bit of a reflection here as you listen to this. Think about anger. And I'm using that because I have a history with it. It's the easiest place for me to go. Think about anger. Does experiencing or feeling anger feel safe to you? Not your partner feeling anger, you. Thinking back to your own experience with anger. Does it feel safe to feel or experience anger? If your answer is no, then you will not be able to provide an emotionally safe space for your partner's anger. You will either shut down, which creates unsafety, or you will fight back and you will judge, reject, or some other negative consequence. You'll express that towards their anger and naturally will create an unsafe environment for that emotion simply based on the reality that you don't have a safe relationship or a safe space for you with your own anger. A lot of people right now, they're going to rage rooms, right? And rage rooms, in first opinion, would be a great resource to start creating safety around an emotion. Maybe it's anger, hurt, or pain, or sadness, or grief, whatever it is, a rage room where you go in essentially with a bat or some sort of tool and you start breaking things apart. It's a safe, contained way to say, hey, it's okay if I experience this. There isn't always going to be some brutal negative consequence that I have to feel shame for. Right? I'm just simply in a room that I've chosen to be in where it is okay to do this. That can help us transcend the in-person experience when we're having anger experiences. We then know, okay, I've experienced anger in a safe way before. I may be able to experience safe anger in a safe way now. Now, here's where things get pretty complicated in a relationship dynamic. Let's say you're having an argument and you get angry. You have started to build a relationship with anger and you feel safer feeling anger. If your partner responds to your anger with judgment or rejection or some sort of negative consequence, it has a highly likelihood of demolishing whatever relationship that you have created with anger. And now you may no longer feel safe experiencing it. This is the power of intimate relationships, is that our partner is meant to be our safe haven. This is a space where we are meant to be safe in all ways, still challenged, right? Still conflicting narratives, still conflicting beliefs. All of that can be true. But it is a space where we are meant to feel safe and secure. And when we don't, the power it has to completely revert us back to old belief systems or old historical patterns is basically night and day. Especially because we haven't built a sense of resiliency around a lot of the patterns we're trying to work on, right? Resiliency is overcoming that challenge consistently over time and being able to get back up on our feet. If we haven't felt anger in front of our partner, been judged, and gotten back up on our feet, we don't really have resiliency around that experience. So we're going to revert back to feeling unsafe and probably lashing out. So when we're talking about emotional safety, it is a two-way conversation. We first need to start with feeling safe with the emotion within ourselves. And maybe that involves a rage room. Maybe that involves screaming into a pillow. Maybe that involves just being angry in another room. Whatever it is, right? Using anger as the catalyst here, it is imperative that we start to feel safe with that emotion for ourselves. Because if we don't, then we likely are judging our own anger. We're rejecting our own anger. We're suppressing our own anger. We're shaming ourselves for being angry. And all of these approaches will then translate into how we approach our partner's anger. We won't be able to hold a safe space for them to be angry because we don't have that space for ourselves. Now, insert any emotion you want here, whether it's sadness, hurt, pain, embarrassment, you name it, whatever it is. This is where the conversation of doing some of the work for yourself comes in, right? Is just, again, reflecting what are my relationships to these emotions? And do I provide or do I feel safe experiencing them? A lot of times I get into client work, and the interesting one that comes up is sadness. Don't feel safe feeling sad. They believe that sad might lead to relentless sadness and will take them out of their life and will lead down a dark road. That's their belief about sadness. That's how unsafe sadness feels. So, a lot of the work, again, is how do we start to create a secure relationship with these emotions? Let's talk about this judgment and rejection piece and how it applies to emotional safety. I want you to just imagine the last time your partner had an emotion. Let's say it was sadness. They were clearly tearing up or crying in front of you. Let's say they were angry and sad maybe at the same time. Whatever it was, right? Just think of an emotion they had. It could even be positive emotions. They were super excited and joyful, right? I just want you to consider how you responded to that emotion. What was your reaction? Right? Was it, did you meet that energy? Right? Did you get angry back, or did you get excited back? Did you match the energy there? Did you criticize them for being in that emotion? Can't believe you're so angry. Why are you so upset with this? I don't even understand why you're crying. Right? Did you judge their experience? Right? Did you reject it, saying, "Hey, can you stop crying for a second so we can have this conversation? Hey, can you just stop being so mad right now? I just want to talk to you." Right? Did you reject it? Did you judge it? Or did you even have a further negative consequence, right? Did you shame them for feeling that way? Did you just walk away? Did you completely ignore them and stonewall them, right? Did you take away all safety by your actions, right? What was your response to the emotion that they had or that they shared? This may be a confronting conversation for you because, in a lot of ways, what we need to understand is that the basis of a lot of healthy relationships is emotional and intellectual safety. Because physical safety is a given. We expect that, but we know that emotional and psychological safety are more difficult. When I speak to intellectual safety or psychological safety, I just want us to consider more of the word authenticity. Right? Is my authentic self welcome here? With all my thoughts, my opinions, my ideas, my beliefs, is all of that welcome here? That would be an example of how to create psychological safety for me. That's why I separate the two. But emotional safety can still be involved in sharing thoughts and feelings without fear of judgment or rejection. So, again, coming back to the conversation, what was your response like? What kind of space did you create? An example of creating a safe environment for an emotion would be, "Hey, I'm really sad right now." And you responding with, "Wow, that sounds tough. Tell me more." I'm inviting in more of that emotion because I understand it, probably because I've understood it for myself. Or I care enough about you to want to understand you. Therefore, I need to create the environment in which you feel safe and secure in sharing. Now, yes, of course, you can do all of the work to create safety and security with your own emotion. But the power of healing and the power of change comes through relationship. And so, what's required is for somebody, ideally our intimate partner, to create or hold that space for us. And when they don't, it can feel like we as a person are being rejected. And that's our ultimate fear, being abandoned and rejected. So, emotional safety requires a safe environment. So, what kind of environment are you creating for somebody else's emotions? Now, this doesn't mean that you have to say, tell me more, but what it does mean is, can you park your judgment? Can you park your rejection or whatever other negative consequence you're applying to this experience? Can you let that be? Can you press the pause button and just allow them to have their emotional experience? Now, in many ways, if that emotional experience is coming at you, if it is demoralizing and disrespectful and demeaning towards you, that can be a very much tougher experience. And ideally, your relationship is built on the back of an agreement that you won't behave that way and that you're free to be angry and not disrespectful. But if that's not the case, then that would be where we start is, hey, let's create an environment where we can feel our emotions without attacking each other with them. Meaning, I'm going to be really big right now. I'm going to be angry. I'm going to be frustrated. I'm going to be all these things, and it's going to be very emotional and very heated and very fiery. And as I'm talking, I'm not disrespecting you as a person because we've made that agreement. But it's still a heated moment. You're probably still going to feel uncomfortable. It's still going to be a lot to hold. And that's what we've agreed on. That creating that environment of safety for our emotions is our priority. So that can be a step for you as you leave this conversation. Identify if you have an agreement in your relationship where you are free to be in the experience of your emotions without fearing the judgment or rejection or other worse negative consequence. And that you also agree that when you share, you're not going to blatantly attack and demoralize the other person. That's not what we're here for. But we're still going to get into the heat of the fire of frustration and anger. That still exists too. Right? Finding the balance between the two will help start to create a sense of emotional safety. Now, for men, I can hear the conversation loud and clear because if you think about emotional safety, in a lot of ways, what we're talking about is women's emotional safety, right? Or at least that's the common narrative, specifically because we have this belief that women are more emotional. The irony is that men are just as emotional. We just are quicker at parking it and hiding it in the background, right? We feel all the emotions. We have all of the emotional experiences that women do. But what we tend to do, or what we've built a pretty solid skill set on, is getting rid of them, right? Moving on, pretending they don't exist. Doesn't mean they didn't exist in the first place. It just means we're really good at making it look like they didn't. So when we talk about emotional safety, generally we're talking about men holding a safe space for women. So I want to start there. Men, in a lot of ways, you understand that your partner is more emotionally expressive than you are. You know this, and that's okay. There's no shame or guilt in this. What I want to challenge you into right now is just because they are emotionally expressive or more emotionally expressive does not mean anything about them or the relationship that you two have. There is neither an above or below experience. What I want us to consider here is, what is your ability right now in this moment? How strong is your ability to hold space for her emotions? How well do you do that? How well can you sit there and take the fire, hold the fire, guide the fire? Instead of letting this become a wildfire, can you hold space for it so that it is contained, safe, and secure? This isn't a space, or maybe let me rephrase that. Emotional safety often involves just simply allowing and witnessing. I've gone to a couple men's groups, and in those men groups, the power of that group is not on what we learn, but the power of the group is being witnessed and held without judgment, without rejection in our experience. And so when it comes to supporting your partner and creating a safe space, my challenge is, what is your current capacity to hold? Do you know how to do that? And if you don't, and you don't have a large capacity for it, then what's the plan? What are you doing about it? How are you stepping up? What do you need to step forward? It's crucial that we as men continue to learn that we are the structure of the relationship. And so think about a raging river, right? If there is no walls to the side of the river guiding it down, then the water will take over and it will flood the landscape. There's power there, there's force there. That's the feminine. That's the energy of the feminine, right? It's powerful, but it's slightly chaotic, and yet it's so forceful. And what we come in and we do is we just simply hold a safe space and guide it down the way. Now, it doesn't mean it's a straight line, right? You think about all the rivers you found. Rarely are they straight lines, right? Little streams, rarely are they straight lines. They go left and they go right because the power and the force of the water wants to go. It wants to escape. And we're here to provide a solid, firm foundation, solid, firm riverbank, holding the water, not forcing it, just holding it. So when we comes to the force, the power of an emotion, what does our ability to be a riverbank look like? Are we eroding way faster than we're holding, or are we holding firm? And in order to do that, we need to build the skill set of understanding our own emotional landscape and how we hold the reality of our own emotional world in the same way. Because right now, what we're saying is, hey, I'm going to try to be this firm riverbank for you. But when my emotion comes up, I actually just plug the dam. I just shut that shit down. So in reality, I'm trying to do something without the skill set. So I'm eroding faster than I'm holding. And sure enough, the landscape is being flooded. And so it is so imperative that we get great at that skill and we find the tools and resources to help us get better at that. Now, there is a flip side to this coin here that's coming up a lot right now that I think is imperative. There is a loud conversation talking about safety in a relationship dynamic from a woman to a man. And I think that I really like this conversation because it's a little, I would say, controversial, but it's also very powerful because not a man's job is to create safety in a relationship, but a woman can also take away safety in a relationship. And the conversation is alive around the question, are women ready for authentic, genuine, emotionally driven, strong men? Not strong in the form of power over, but strong in the form of power with, strong in the form of connected to emotion, strong in the form of connected to authenticity and self, strong in the form of guiding, holding the structure without needing to force where it goes, but still holding space for that, still guiding. And so when it comes to safety in a relationship, for the women listening, I also want you to consider what kind of space you're holding for your man in a relationship dynamic. And my dog goes back in the background, just drinking in the middle of a hot take. Come on, Nova. It's always Nova. She's the youngest, of course. She's just getting after it. So again, this conversation is, do you have the skill set as a woman to hold your man's emotion without judgment, rejection, or negative consequence? Do you have that skill as well? It doesn't mean you're the guiding river or the guiding force, but in a lot of ways, a man is craving to be able to share in a judgment-free area. Now, yes, of course, as women, you are too, but I'm not having that conversation with you right now. What I'm having a conversation about is woman to man. Are you holding a safe space for him as well, emotionally? Can he cry without you seeing him as less than? Can he cry without you judging his character? Can he cry without you rejecting him? Do you have the capacity to hold space for that? Not to fix it, not to get rid of it, not to shame it, and not to walk away from it. Do you have that space equally as well? And that's difficult, right? I think about my experience growing up. Rarely did I ever see a man cry. And I remember one time I did. I was so shocked, I froze. I didn't know what to do. I went quiet. I went mute. This was a father figure in my life. I said, "You don't do that. Why are you doing that? This is confusing. Now I see you a little bit more like a big pussy baby." Excuse my language there. That was the truth at the time. That's exactly what I'm referring to. Is what is my story right now? And will I allow it to take over? Or am I more focused on creating safety emotionally in this relationship? That I will park that and I will understand this is important. But I also trust, based on history, that my man's got it. I came across this great video the other day, and she said, whenever a man is sharing with me and I think he's done, I wait 20 more seconds. I just count to 20 in silence. And the guy asked her, "Why do you do that?" And she said, "Because there's always more." But so often that space gets taken away because men are not traditionally big sharers, not big offerers, not big emotional expressors, and they're not big on just getting through the thoughts. They'd rather just be quiet. So there's not a lot of space because it's not been a habit, it's not been a routine. And yet here we are still begging for it without knowing we're begging for it. So if we give it an extra 20 seconds, he will keep talking. There are other things on his mind that he may want to unload. And holding that quiet space gives him the understanding that this space in front of me is safe. I'm not going to be judged. I'm not going to be rejected. Perfect. I might be able to share a little bit more. Then from there, she was asked in this interview, when do you know that he's done? How do you know when to start talking? And she's like, he will tell me. And isn't that fascinating, right? There is so much of our experience as a man that we know, right? We're clear, right? We know when we're done because whatever emotion or thought train we've taken, we're going to reach a capacity. We're going to be done. And we're going to be ready to get after it again. But so much of our healing and our personal development and our own just general well-being requires us to be able to work through that mud. But if there's no space for us to do that mud, then the mud clogs up, builds up. So, women, this conversation comes to you as well. Are you able to hold space without fear, without judgment, without rejection, without walking away, without shame? Are you able to hold their emotion, us men, our emotion, allowing us to work ourselves through it, knowing and trusting that on the other side, it's not going to take us down, it's not going to drain us, we're not going to go into the deep depths of depression. We got it. And also, it doesn't mean that we still don't have emotion through it. This is the complicated nature of emotional safety, is that it's a two-way dynamic. Again, coming back to what I said earlier, it's really difficult to build safety and security with your own emotions and then have somebody else reject them and think you're going to be okay. Your system, your nervous system likely will feel intense emotion from that rejection because it's interpreting it as abandonment. It interprets it as you're not there for me. When I'm confused, we agreed either subconsciously or otherwise that you'd be there for me. Why are you not being there for me right now? Now, this is a larger conversation that starts to stem into emotional safety and also challenging our partners to grow and evolve, which is another key component of a relational dynamic. Where does emotional expression end and open conversation and dialogue begin? And when does offering begin? When does support and advice begin? When does challenging begin? It's difficult. And a lot of relationships differ. Some are ready right out of the gate. They get through the emotion, like, okay, tell me where my blind spots are. They just get there. Other ones don't want to hear the blind spots for a couple of days. All they wanted was the emotional expression. And this is key or a key component of relationships called attunement. I understand you based on historical context. I've been paying attention. I've asked you questions and got curious about what you need in each moment. And I know that each moment is different, but I have a general understanding that right now, in most moments, you don't really want much from me, no advice, no coaching, no challenge. Your request, your desire is for me to ask you to tell me more and hold space for all that you have. I can do that. Perfect. I understand what we're up to here and I'm paying attention. I also know that if you ever need something, you will ask me because I have asked you to do so. So I am clear. So I don't interject. I don't offer inappropriately. We've created systems here, but I've led the way. Men, speaking to you, I've led the way in creating that dynamic. So we're clear, right? Clarity creates connection. Lack of clarity creates disconnection. Emotional safety can be the end of a relationship. Over time, micro moments of emotional unsafety, or rather emotional judgment, emotional rejection, can slowly deteriorate the relationship. So a lot of people in long-term relationships that haven't repaired these moments consistently over time, haven't re-brought them back up, haven't faced them together, saying I didn't feel safe there, I didn't feel very comfortable being emotional with you, right? And are not working together to create improvement, it will slowly deteriorate and it will start to look like completely different things in the future. It'll look like contempt, resentment, sometimes hate. It can lead to some pretty dark roads because, again, a relationship is supposed to be our safe haven where all of us is accepted, all of us is welcomed, and all of us and all of our authenticity is desired here. And so I can't pick and choose which parts are okay to be here and which parts aren't, unless, of course, they're a little over the top toxic, and we're pretty clear on that when it's abuse, right? So I'm not okay with that. But emotional safety does really live continuously over time. And having a conversation where you take away the emotional safety or the emotionally safe environment, right, can start to feel like that dark alley. I don't know that I'll be protected in this dark alley. Therefore, I have to be on guard. And on guard is not safe. On guard is unsafe. How do we start to build more lamp posts in the dark alley so that everything is seen, everything is visible, and it's predictable? How do we create an emotionally predictable environment together where I understand what you do with your emotions, you understand what I do with my emotions. We know what that experience is going to be like together, and we can work through it together because we've created that consistency, that security, that comfortability. Emotional safety will come up a lot in this podcast, and I'm sure it's coming up a lot in your relationship right now. A key takeaway, a key challenge to finish the podcast is I want you to consider any of your last relationship conversations and think about the environment that you created or that you were a part of, specifically around the emotions: anger, frustration, sadness, pain, hurt, happiness, whatever. That's the other side of the coin, is happiness. It's heavily involved in a relationship dynamic too. My capacity to hold happiness at the beginning of my relationship, my capacity to hold excitement and joy was minimal. So I actually ended up like demoralizing or minimizing hers because I didn't feel safe with it. The irony in that unsafety doesn't involve like the generically seen as unsafe emotions. It also can do with joy and peace and so on. Anyways, think about the last conversation you had. Think about the environment you created first, not the environment they created. Think about the environment you created first, because we're in a high accountability state here. Then consider the environment they created or held. What kind of space was held for both of you? And then figure out if it felt safe or not, or if you were on edge, or if you were unsure, and lean into what you think you would needed and what you think they needed in order to feel safe in the emotional experience. This is a stepping stone into getting more clear on what dynamic we need to create for ourselves in our own unique relationship. I'm going to challenge you on another thing. to get into more conversation with yourself about how safe you feel with your own emotions. For a lot of men listening, going to feel very unsafe. That's okay. That's where the work begins. For a lot of women, it might be initially seen as safe, but I would argue that some of the emotion, maybe like sadness, maybe like pain, maybe like anger, might actually also feel unsafe. Great. Just because you express it doesn't mean it's safe. So get into the nitty gritties of your stories or your beliefs that you have about each emotion. Understand how you're currently relating to the emotion. That will help you determine what kind of environment you're holding space for with each emotion. And that will also help you determine maybe some of the reasons why, when you get into an argument and one of those emotions shows up, you explode or you implode. Now we can get to work. Now we can say, okay, I understand this now. I see this now. Now my work is to build a different relationship with this emotion. For example, my relationship with anger is I will never be angry like them. The reality is anger is still running the show. It still owns my life. I'm rejecting it. I'm abandoning it. Therefore, shame breeds in silence. It's going to show up somewhere. So instead, I turn towards the anger and I try to talk to it. Anger is a part of me. And I say, hey, angry part of me, what's up? Like, hey, I see you, man. Talk to me. Why are we so angry? And anger will tell you, anger will speak to you, and you can hold space for it. Or you can continue to judge and reject it. Your choice. But I'm going to bargain that your desire is to build healthier relationships with your partner. And that's going to start with building healthier relationships with your parts. Sadness. Listen, I always tell you to just write F off. I'm not going to do that today. Tell me more. Oof. Even as I just did that, sadness is like, yeah, God, sweet bliss, let me out of this cage. I need to give some waterworks here, even just for 10 seconds. Feel that, right? Just having a conversation with his emotions. And over time, repeated, and then again, conversations combined with our partner on how to create safe environments. The two combined are very likely to start creating the basis of a foundation for emotional safety in your relationship. If you slip and you fall, there's an unsafe environment, then that is important to address. So when I asked you to go back to a conversation and ask what kind of space that you provided and the space that they provided, if it didn't feel safe, that's something to go back to and address so that that doesn't accumulate over time. The quicker we can start repairing the things that have just happened or that are happening now, the better, because repair over time helps create consistency and safety. Right? The more times I walk this well-lit alleyway, even though it's still dark, in moments it's still dark, I feel safer and safer and safer. Right? But the moment somebody jumps out of behind the garbage can is the moment that I now have to think about it. The next time I come to that alley, I have to think about it. And then over time, again, it's consistency, consistency, consistency. Consistency through emotional safety. That's the game we're playing. So to wrap up, building a relationship with your own emotion and understanding if you feel safe experiencing that emotion on your own. Number two, understanding more clearly if you have the capacity today to hold the emotion without judgment or rejection or some sort of negative consequence. Do you have that capacity? And if you do, well, then I'll challenge you to reflect and see if you're actually acting on that, because that will tell us the truth on if you have that capacity or not. If you really want to test yourself, you can ask your partner if they think you have the capacity to hold their emotion. That's a good one, right? That's a difficult one. You better be open to feedback. Take that, eat that, because that's really where we find our safety mechanism, right? We never know how safe a relationship is until we ask our partner. Okay. And then the third piece is to start having agreements or start making agreements on how you want to create that emotionally safe environment. Meaning, hey, I think that we should start making an agreement together around holding space for emotions. I really want to get better at expressing mine. I know that you might not always think that I hold great space for yours. And sometimes I feel we cross the bridge into disrespect. I know I do too. I don't want to do that anymore. Let's agree to no longer attack each other disrespectfully or demoralizingly with our anger. Understand that line over time. And let's not hide our anger anymore. Let's not defer. Let's not suppress. Let's express ourselves. Let's get into what's called fierce intimacy. Let's get into that a little bit. Let's understand that we're going to fail, we're going to fall, and yet I'm in this with you. Let's do this together. I'm committed to you and to what we want to build. And then you can make an agreement. Hey, I agree to provide safety in this relationship. If I don't, please call me forward. Emotional safety, where we can feel secure and comfortable expressing our feelings without fear of judgment, rejection, or other negative consequences. It can also be phrased as feeling accepted for who you are and the emotional needs that you have, and validating those emotions, knowing that it's okay to be vulnerable and authentic in the presence of your partner. The more we can do that and create that space over time, the better off our relationship's going to be. And in a lot of ways, it's going to help us stand the test of time. Okay, take a deep breath. Good. Okay. Incredible job. Thanks for joining me today. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Today's episode's late. Meant to do it yesterday. Life gets in the way, but we're on here for Tuesday. We're going to have another episode coming to you live tomorrow. Thank you so much for listening. This has been a conversation about emotional safety. If you're ready to take this work to the next level, you want to know what's required of you and how to do it when it comes to creating safe environments in your relationship in order to create a secure, stable, successful relationship, I'm your guy. Let's talk. Let's connect. Reach out to me. Go to my socials at the relationship coach _ or click the link in the under this podcast episode. There's actually a link to directly book a discovery call. It's free. It's just for you and I to get on the same page, see if this work is for you, see how I can help you. I can guarantee you I can help the state of your relationship. So reach out to me if you're ready to start that work. Otherwise, if you like this episode, please subscribe to be informed of next episodes. Please give a rating. It helps a lot in just allowing this episode and this podcast to expand to a wider audience and to reach more people who you think might need this work. Share it as well if you like. And again, I appreciate you being here. I hope you have an incredible day. Talk soon.